Okay, welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast. Today, Stu is sick, so you've got me, your host, Dave Jaggs, and we've got Ethan, from one of our business partners from down in Dunedin. So welcome aboard, Ethan.
Good morning, Dave. Happy to be here. Glad to be back on the podcast. It's been a few weeks since I've been on it, but
it has.
Happy to be back in the hot seat with you.
So today, Ethan and I are going to cover off some, more interesting stuff that we find interesting. And we're going to cover off the Pareto principle. So for those of you that don't know, the Pareto principle basically states that roughly 80% of consequences or actions produce 20% of your results, and 20% of your consequences or actions produce 80% of your results. So I guess when you apply it to a business side of things, it's probably the fact that 80% of your income comes from 20% of your customers, and then obviously in the opposite direction. So that's something we kind of wanted to cover off because in today's kind of economy and things that are going on, it's really important to highlight who your important customers are and actions that service those customers. But before we get into that, as Stu always does to me, how's your week been, Ethan?
Yeah, it's a good question. Always good to start a conversation with something topical and timely. It's been a good week in terms of business around the south, Dunedin and south. There's a bit of renewed optimism in some ways. I guess as time goes on, and without lockdowns and major disruptions, I think people get more confident and more optimistic about the future. There's been a lot of talk over the last few weeks about inflation and rising costs and labour shortages. There's been a few negatives in the press, which I think do play on people's mind a little bit. But I think the fact that we haven't been bombarded with COVID restrictions for a while now is outweighing that, and optimism is high. And it does help that this week we have an All Blacks test in Dunedin. So hospitality is like, yep, this is what we've been waiting for. We haven't had this for a couple of years. Let's rip into it.
Yeah, definitely. I'd feel like light at the end of the tunnel, wouldn't it? I think people are getting that confidence to start booking trips and they're knowing it's going to go ahead. And, that starts to just really create some buoyancy in the market. But I guess it's just as long as they've got the staff there. I've had some interesting catch-ups with a couple of my hospo clients in the last couple of weeks, and it's actually good to see that, they're making a real positive move. They're kind of going forward. They're starting to address the staffing situations. And it's been 3 years of them kind of getting by, whereas now they're actually starting to see growth.
Yeah.
They're starting to see the fat back in the margin, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, exactly. I think a big thing for me, and I'm not an economist, but I'm somewhat interested in that sort of stuff, but I can't offer any advice in that area really, is that we talk about inflation and things that are getting more expensive and us having to be wary of, I guess, cash flow and things like that. But I think the media and external influences only make it worse. Whereas if you literally stop spending, well then yes, we'll plummet. We'll plummet into a recession because there's no money around. Yeah. You're not paying your guy, so they can't pay their guy, and it's just this spirals out of control when we get worse and worse situations. Whereas if you keep confident and try to operate mostly as usual with a few tweaks here and there, then you might find that you actually sail through the storm.
Yeah. Just being aware and kind of being budget conscious, I guess, which I guess nicely segues really into Pareto and the 80-20 rule, doesn't it? Because I guess, so I'm going to try and get this right. I think it was Wilfred Pareto is the technical time, is the name. He came up with the 80-20 rule because he basically realized that 80% of your kind of workload creates 20% of your income, 20% creates 80% of your income. So it's actually how can you utilize that to focus in? And I think the clients I've been dealing with particularly recently, I've had some hospital ones who I don't think it's been quite as applicable to, but particularly some electrical companies where, they might have a client base of about 60, 70 people who they work with reasonably regularly, but of those 60 or 70, 5 of them are builders, and they're the ones who actually produce majority of their income. So producing kind of up to that kind of 80% bracket. And I guess that sparks the conversation of, one, how do you treat those guys differently to make sure that you sustain them? Because, you lose one of them, it's going to hurt. And then 2, how do you find more of them?
Well, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, it kind of comes on to something that you were talking to me about just before with your panel beater.
Yeah, we'll go with that. It's a good generic term for that sort of industry. It encompasses a whole lot of things. But yeah, my example that I was talking to Dave about before was a panel beating business. They know that their most profitable and meaty jobs are with a certain type of vehicle. In these vehicles would be camper vans, caravans. They know there's enough work in that to sustain them, but they've been finding it hard to shift their focus to more of that stuff, and get out of the weeds of smaller insurance jobs where there's not a lot of fat in, and the insurance companies are dictating prices largely, and they're not. It's just not a profitable, enjoyable avenue of income for this particular business. So, yeah.
So I suppose it's always hard when someone else is setting the pay point as well for like the insurance company kind of setting the thing. Are the camper vans coming in through insurance claims as well, or through kind of more personal type?
Well, some of them certainly will be, because I imagine a lot of them have got insurance. You probably wouldn't do it otherwise, but there'll be a mixture of both. And I'll probably tarred it all with the same brush when I said insurance jobs before, but by insurance jobs I mean like smaller prangs, like you've reversed into the pole, or a cricket ball's hit the car.
Shopping trolleys caught your door.
Yeah, something like that. That's essentially the guts of it.
Yeah, so I guess essentially kind of going along the lines of, it's like they actually need to start highlighting out who their A clients are. And I guess this works for the electrical company and your guys, panel beaters, and ensuring that they create the opportunity to service them, because that's actually where they've got their most profitability.
Yeah, I think every business, ours included, can struggle from taking one step back. And by one step back, I might mean taking the time just to work out these things, or spend some time on the business rather than in it, to then come up with a plan, which is, all right, we're going to shift our focus to this type of work because we know that is where we make our money, and perhaps what we enjoy doing. So we're going to have a plan to just ease out of these little nuts and bolts, rats and mice jobs, and we're going to focus more resource on the guys we want to be working with.
Yeah, and I guess taking a step back from that, it starts by knowing who they are. So really, probably the first step is to actually sit down as a business owner, if you haven't done this already, or sit down with your accountant, your team. Lots of people will have different views and be like, well, wait a second, who are our most profitable clients and why?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? You might find that you've got 2 clients, you can do the same job for them, but just the workload required with one of them is much higher than the other one. And I guess it's understanding who are your most profitable and your big spenders. And that probably starts by tracking it well in Xero, ensuring that all of that side of things is up to date, accurate sales invoices. But once you know that, it's probably a very, very powerful process to actually sit down, understand what a customer's profitability is.
Oh, it really is. And look, it's the question of, how detailed do you want to go? And in terms of like your invoicing and your customer records, all that sort of stuff, like how much detail do you want? And I guess it comes down to how much a trade-off between time and value. If you can
Yeah.
ascertain initially, like, what information do you foresee is important, to being able to work out where to focus your time and effort, and then coming up with the ways to make sure that's recorded. It's not just using things like Xero. There'll be various add-ons for construction or trade. For example, you're going to want to have like your Tradeifys and your Ferguses to better track individual jobs, rather than just here's the invoice. I think this related to that. I will go with that. That sort of thing.
Yeah. So you truly understand it. And if you're working for them regularly, you get the opportunity to build that relationship that creates a strong bond, and it's how you want to work moving forward. I guess if they're coming to you regularly, you're working for them regularly, you can create really good operating rhythms, which generally makes things kind of efficient and pain-free.
Yes.
Whereas when you start a relationship with someone, there's kind of that time where you have to understand how each other works, touch points, sensitive areas. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're getting into that bit where it's like, okay, I need to be up to speed on that. And I think that's really important to understand.
Yeah. It can take a bit of time to get there. With
definitely
new clients and that. And like I said before, it's not just about who the most profitable clients are. It's also, what do you enjoy? Overall, where does the financial gain and the enjoyment intersect to make a nice equilibrium of profitability versus I'm enjoying what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah, good client to work with.
Yeah. Who do I get a kick out of?
Yeah. So I guess, if we kind of build on, it's like you find out who that A client is with some good tracking, reporting, you know who they are. And then it's having the ability to understand how are you going to service that relationship to ensure, one, it stays and it keeps developing. But then spotting those relationships early within the rest of your audience. Because I think the rest of your audience can be quite noisy, for want of a better word. Potentially it's low income, it's lots of emails, lots of calls. And what you need to do is, one, you've got to service that part of your market, because, it all adds to your bottom line. But you actually need to be able to pick out who in there has scope to be bigger then.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think we've even touched on it in the past, whereas you can't assess them on day one and be like, let's focus on them because I feel like their industry is going to be great for us. And, you just don't know that. So you have to give them all a reasonable go.
A fair playing field. Yep.
Yeah, you can't just write things off from day one. And arguably, if you're writing things off from day one, then perhaps you shouldn't be working with them in the first place, because that might not be fair on their end. If you're not going to do good work for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a tough one, and it's going to come down to your own systems, processes, and protocols.
Yeah. And I guess it's allocating the time to it, isn't it? I was speaking to this electrical company up in Auckland today, and we were kind of talking about who their kind of A clients are, the kind of work that they're providing, and how do you find more of them. But it's having the ability within your systems and your staff, isn't it? Like, to be able to service them the way they want to be serviced. So like, these guys are quite time conscious. So if they call you, they want you to come out. So potentially that means that you've got the ability within your staffing and your scheduling to be like, okay, we can push that job because we've got to get out there. Because actually, if they're providing that big portion of your income, you actually have to keep servicing that relationship. And it's knowing, I guess, where your bread's buttered from a certain side of things, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Unfortunately, you've got to service the right relationships.
Yeah. No, you did right. Excuse me. It's definitely a matter of not taking those relationships for granted either. There's an element of, at times, they're already a client. They've been a client for a long time. Let's just, keep doing what we're doing, and sort of just assuming or hoping that their relationship will just look after itself. Every now and then it's probably nice, well, more the times than just every now and then, but it's good to wow them regularly so that continues to be the case, rather than being like, all right, that's sweet as over there, let's go find another client over here, or let's grow these guys and just leave them because they've already grown. For goodness sake, keep prioritizing them, because the more happier they get, the more of an advocate they become.
Hasn't that got a technical name, like shiny object syndrome, where you kind of end up chasing the next new thing rather than servicing the previous one?
Yeah, possibly. It's almost like when you've got staff and they're doing a really good job, but you become accustomed to them doing a good job, and you forget to give them kudos.
They've set like a new average at this level.
Yeah, they like to be high five from time to time. So they get that positive reinforcement.
Yeah. So with this company I was speaking with earlier, they kind of highlight the fact they actually, well, I guess they're in the relationship building stage with a potential A client, one of the 20% who's going to make up 80% of their income. And it was quite interesting because, they had a bit of a chat with them. I think they might have even just said, hey, look, I know I'm not your number one Sparky. However, please consider me for jobs. And I think the builder actually said, or something along the lines of, my other Sparky's getting a bit too busy, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's effectively, he's instantly voiced out, this is my issue. So you already know what you need to do to service that relationship to a level that he wants, which is be there.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a powerful thing to do, is actually, one, identify who they are, but two, identify what box do they sit in. Are they like time conscious? Are they money conscious? Are they service conscious? And then just ensure that you're meeting them where they need to be met.
Yeah. I mean, we see it a lot now in our industry, Dave, don't we? Like, in terms of accounting and finance and business support and advisory and all that stuff, a lot of clients come to us because they're used to not getting a lot more than a transactional relationship when it comes to accountancy and business advice. And that does often seem to be the pain point of a lot of businesses, is just that knowing that support is there and available, and it's not a transactional relationship.
Yeah.
It filters through to a whole lot of other industries.
Yeah, and it's nurturing it, isn't it? And responding to it. And I guess, we talk about the whole service in those, and I guess it's actually thinking each week, isn't it? Like, how am I going to build in time for the big clients first of all? And then how do you fill in the time around that?
Yes.
Are you filling in time with those smaller jobs? But before you fill everything up with the smaller jobs, you actually have to allocate time for those big clients. You have to allocate the time to service those relationships, even if it's potentially non-profitable. But to give them a call, go for a coffee, do the little things that secure that relationship moving forward.
Yeah, we do talk about that a lot as well. Is don't chase easy money, or don't chase low hanging fruit today, because by
the best fruits at the top,
by climbing a little bit higher, and perhaps, I guess it's the same as taking one step back today, you can create a much better relationship for next month, or years to come, and knowing the lifetime value of clients and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's the analogy of the professor, the rocks, the sand, and the beer, isn't it? That you kind of highlight out what your most important things are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Rach Harris did video, it, didn't she?
Yeah.
So
initially, I was like,
for you guys who don't know, Rach Harris is our HR in-house HR advisor, team mum. Probably tells me and Ethan off the most. And she kind of Quizmaster, yeah, she's Quizmaster as well. And she kind of did this presentation. It's like effectively the big rocks are things that are really important to you, so you should always put them in the glass first. You fill it up with kind of the next important things, which are your smaller rocks, and then you'll have time for all of your sand around that. And then there's always time for a beer, which filters into all of the gaps.
Yeah.
So I guess from a working point of view, using that analogy, it's taking your A clients, ensuring you've had time to service them. Then it's that kind of the next group, isn't it? Fitting them in, and then whatever time you've got left, it's servicing those guys out at the end. But just always being aware that those clients can kind of step up through the ranks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Knowing those, let's use an alphabetical terminology. It's knowing the A's and the B's, and then the C's, and perhaps the D's, but knowing or still having a good enough relationship with the C's and the D's to identify the best ways to service them, so maybe they can become B's. Or
you don't want to devalue them, do you? But you do need to know where your income and priorities are lying, unfortunately. Yeah. It's just kind of the way it is, isn't it? So another kind of a tool that we utilize through Mindshop is it's called a force field, and essentially it's about using your strengths to kind of overpower your weaknesses, I guess. And it's something that I kind of do talk to a lot of my customers about. It's like, where do they perceive their strengths and their values? And quite often, it's being like approachable. It's being, they've got really good communication skills and things like that. They're not necessarily like tech experts or something where they've got like a product that is just so desperately different to everyone else. If we're using, I guess, the kind of electrical company analogy, it's like, well, realistically, there's a whole bunch of people who can wire a house. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of people who go to the suppliers and probably get around the same rate. Yep. They all need to live. They all need to roughly earn kind of similar figures. So it's like, well, what makes you stand out from the crowd? And I was talking to these guys, and it's like, they'd say that they're approachable, good communication skills. And it's like, well, you need to utilize those strengths to secure your client base. And this is the kind of whole principle they use with the force field. It's like you need to double down on that. And I think that's a really good thing for all of our clients to remember. Is like, if you are approachable, if you are in that bracket, it's like, ensure that you make time to speak to your A's.
Yes.
Because actually create that connection point, build that rapport, build that relationship. Don't just know their name, know their wife's name, know their kid's name, or family names. Do you know what I mean? Because that doubles down on the fact that you're approachable. It doubles down on the fact that you're good with communication. And then it will double back on you with the fact of they're going to feel more connected and more likely to come back to you for more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that can apply to anything, like it doesn't just have to be communication. It's just knowing your strengths as a business.
Yeah. And that's why I think things like maybe using the force field tool, or even just having like a reconnect session with your team, or even just with yourself individually, reflection every couple of months or so, just to remind yourself what your strengths are, and perhaps new strengths have been either developed or discovered over those last month or two, and just reminding yourself, what you want to focus on. It's almost like your 80% of your strengths or your habits, or sorry, maybe in this case, 20% of your habits or strengths might result in 80% of the benefit. There's that Pareto principle again. It can be applied to pretty much anything. And just remind yourself, have I actually been playing to those strengths over the last month or two, or could I have played to them more? And more often than not, for me personally, I look at it and I think, actually, when I've gotten really busy, I've forgotten about what my actual advantage is, what my strategic advantage is. There's another term. I've just been running on sheer instinct, and now I'm lost in the weeds, and I've been doing these small jobs which aren't actually that profitable, or I'm looking after things.
Got caught up in the noise.
Yeah. Whereas actually, I need to be positioning myself over here. So It's just
So I guess
reflection.
it's not only running the Pareto principle over your customer base, it's probably running the Pareto principle over your working day, running it over how you do your work, how your staff do their work, and actually just thinking like, well, wait, how can we reposition ourselves to be servicing the right people at the right times, and then utilize our skill sets in the best possible way.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of principles like the Pareto principle and tools like the force field. You can apply that to any decision in business and in life. And it's a matter of writing down on a piece of paper or having in your mind what problem you want to solve or what issue you're dealing with, and then just listing your strengths and your weaknesses in relation to that, and trying to double down on your strengths or expand them, and then mitigate your weaknesses.
I also think, and I guess this is a conversation we had a little bit yesterday, actually, I also think it's really powerful to ask people, like, just out of interest, what am I doing that's really, making this a valuable relationship?
Yeah.
Or asking people who potentially use other tradies that what makes that so great? Like, understand the market, understand your client base and how you're servicing them that makes it so great, but also understand other people and how they're being serviced in by other kind of businesses and what makes that so valuable. Because, you've got to learn, you've got to be open to learning. And sometimes that's actually having the confidence to ask the question, I think.
Yeah, it is hard. When I say it's hard, it can be uncomfortable, because sometimes it can make you feel self-conscious and
a bit vulnerable.
Yeah, a bit vulnerable. Yeah, and the things that don't always come naturally to human beings, but the long-term gains that you'll get from those painful, I guess, thoughts or those painful discussions, they outweigh that temporary pain.
Yeah, well, I guess none of us were employed. I guess, does it really apply to us? None of the guys who are listening to this, business owners, necessarily stepped up because it was easy. So this is just one of those uncomfortable things that if you can actually potentially do a customer survey, find out how you're meeting the market, where you could be improving, it'll help you kind of create those actions that are going to give you the best result coming back. Recently Rightway did a customer survey and we all got our net promoter scores kind of back for us all to review. And, I think some of it is really positive. Some of it's quite confronting, but unless you actually ask those questions, you're not going to know the answer. You can think what you like to a certain degree. But once you've got it, as long as you do approach it with the right mindset of I'm going to take these results, create positive outcomes, I think it's really important. And at the end of the day, we're all in business to be successful, whether that's increased income, increased time, feeling of self-worth. And the way we increase all of those things is to do what we're doing more profitably or increase the value of it. Do you know what I mean? And that's actually working out those A's, working out how we're doing it, and doubling down on all of those efficiencies and those services that we're providing.
Yeah. Excuse me. It's a interesting thought. When it comes to doing things like a net promoter score or a survey of how are we doing? How did you find it? You're not always going to get every client or every, I guess, person that you have a relationship with or business that you have a relationship with that will reply to it, but you'll at least hopefully get a sample size that's worth, I guess, acting upon.
Worth reviewing.
Yeah, worth reviewing. Yep. And although at times, when people are actually being honest, it can be confronting. At the end of the day, you want to know the truth, because you don't want them to turn around next year or in a few months' time and disengage with you because they found someone better because you didn't know that you weren't servicing them in a way they wanted. Something like that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like having honest and frank relationships with your partner, or things like that. If you don't talk about each other and what it is they like, what it is they don't like, you won't be able to either improve or you might not even be able to sustain. You've got to be on the same page. And my next point in regards to that is, it doesn't actually matter what they say or how bad it is. It just matters how you react to what they've said. It's here's the starting point. Here's where we're at. Okay, that might be shit. At least I know now, and I can move forward and try and improve.
Yeah.
Or, great. That's the clients seem to all be quite happy. So let's prioritize the things that they've said they like.
Yeah, definitely. So if you were to give clients a quick kind of 30-second summary of things that they can kind of take away from this, or they should action, I'm putting you on the spot here, Ethan. What would you kind of say?
Well, the take-home message and things that you can start working on today in your business are knowing what the factors in your business are. So knowing what your rocks are in terms of your clients or your issues in your business, knowing what the big factors are to then prioritize. And if you don't know them already, start by making a system or developing a system which will allow you to record that information moving forward. Then once you've got them, or if you've already got them, start planning around them. Prioritize.
Yeah. So understand what your big rocks are, so potentially where you're getting most of your income or who your big clients are. Understand the systems you can put in place to ensure that you're servicing those, and then kind of understand also like where we're going to start growing those from.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of aware we've covered off, we kind of deviated slightly from Pareto, as is probably always the case. So Pareto is the 80-20 rule. Force field is a kind of mind shop tool that we use to just ensure that people are doubling down on their strengths. And then we kind of covered off NPS, which is a net promoter score. If you have any kind of questions about those, you can flick us an email at marketing@rightway.co.nz, and it's something that we can cover off further, or we can get someone to get in touch with you. If you like this podcast, you can hit subscribe somewhere on whichever one platform you're listening through. And I think, to be honest, hopefully that's some food for thought for everyone to go away and have a little bit of a think about. I'm hopeful that England performs slightly better this weekend, but I'll just have to see what happens with the rugby.
I knew something like that was coming. I'm sure they will. Dave. Let's be positive.
It can't get much worse. They lost to Australia with 14.
Yeah, they did. At the end of the day, who really cares? This is a New Zealand-based podcast. We're all for the All Blacks, and what happens over the ditch, and even with the English team is a second priority.
Yeah, I'll let you have that. I was just thought I'd get it in before you started mocking me for being English somewhere along the lines. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, Ethan. And I think I'll be back with Stu next week, but who knows when your next guest appearance.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to get brought back at any stage and offer some more philosophical perspectives on business.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. See ya.